There was a fight between Rahm Emanuel and a progressive on ABC. Now, you could kind of tell, like, you can see that it gets tense for a second. Like, you could tell that normally you get that, fake kind of jovial banter in these establishment outlets. But there was a moment here where it was like, ooh, people are not feeling these vibes. Like, these guys really disagree and probably don't like each other. So I think this is an important thing to watch because it's very indicative of the broader split in the Democratic Party and what the two sides are representing. So let's watch, then I have a lot to say about it.
Like AOC are going to be able to bury the hatchet and unify the party.
I think we already have. I mean, the reality is most, a supermajority, almost 100% of progressive support Joe Biden are going to work and are already working together with the Biden campaign to make sure we deliver victory. I think the big question and what people don't get about progressives is that we're always fighting for a better future. That's why we're progressives. And so as much as we are excited about getting rid of Donald Trump, we know there is more work to do. We're a little disappointed by the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of racial unrest, and we can't talk about health care in the way that we know that people need us to talk about health care. We're in the middle of a racial unrest. We can't talk about what we need to do to end the preschool to prison pipeline, to get rid of talk about the crime bill and how we need to make sure that we decarcerate our prisons. These are conversations that we would expect to be able to have in a year like this, but we're not. We're talking about what Donald Trump is or is not, which is a very big disappointment.
Jump in, apology. In the end of the day, politically, it's about winning, and Donald Trump is the single greatest issue, and we want to make this a referendum on him.
We disagree about that.
I know we do.
Think that
but
we
I'm with
still
the American
want
people on this one.
People want to vote for something, Ram, and you know that.
I do.
And we already know that Donald Trump is a disaster. We don't need 4 days of that. We need to know what we're going to do to make people whole.
No, I'm from 4 days of making sure that Donald Trump, they know he's a disaster, and we have the answer to that problem.
Rahm Emanuel gets legitimately offended at the notion that maybe the Democrats should push for policy. That maybe what this really should be about is how are we gonna improve people's lives when we have a pandemic that's killing people and we have an economic implosion that we're witnessing in front of our eyes. And we have like a foreclosure and eviction crisis that's about to happen, which means a homelessness crisis. He was offended at the notion that, hey, maybe that should take precedence over Trump. And he fired back. He's like, but we're trying to make this referendum on Trump. And I'm with the American people on this. Interesting, because you're not with the American people on Medicare for All when 69% of them support it. You're not with the American people on legalizing marijuana, which is an overwhelming majority of the American people want that. You're not with the American people on free college. Rahm Emanuel famously said during the Obama administration that progressives are, and I quote, fucking stupid. That's who he is. So here's the point, guys. The reason why he wants to make it about Trump and he wants that to be the centerpiece of the argument is because he wants the power. He wants the Democrats in power. And then here's what he wants to do with that power. Dick. The end goal is to get the power. The end goal is the win. Because then he gets to turn around and say, we're in office. That's the W. That was the whole point. And meanwhile, what progressives are saying is, no, that's not. If you get in power, whoop-de-frickin-do. That doesn't mean anything if you're not improving people's lives. And it's just, this is too perfect because what Rahm Emanuel's doing by saying let's focus on Trump is purposefully leaving out all the policy talk so that there's nothing to even hold him accountable to. There's no criteria. There's no standard by which you can evaluate how he's governing. And this gets to the story that we discussed the other day. The Democrats, behind the scenes, now they're saying to each other, okay, well, Bernie lost, the left lost, so Medicare for All's gone, going, gone. We're not interested. But now they're even saying, who we kidding? A lot of us were advocating for, a public option, but we're going to drop that too. And now let's talk about just expanding the Affordable Care Act. Let me ask you a question. What do we have, like 30 million Americans now that don't have health insurance? If you go with this plan of just vaguely and broadly expanding the Affordable Care Act and not even including a public option, how many people are going to be left without health care even if Rahm Emanuel gets his ideal health system implemented? If you're not doing a public option, that means everything is in the private marketplace. If you leave it in the private marketplace, that means people have to pay out of pocket. If people have to pay out of pocket, that means a lot of people will not be able to afford it. So even in Rahm Emanuel's ideal world where he gets his exact health system he wants implemented, how many people are going to be left without health insurance? The answer is millions. There will be millions of people without health insurance under Rahm Emanuel's ideal system. That, Rahm, is why we argue with you and why we disagree with you and why we think you're ridiculous. You're a power-hungry moron. The whole point is the winning and the self-aggrandizement and getting into office. You don't actually care about the consequences of your actions. You don't actually care about policy. Because the end goal has to be, okay, look, we got in office, but now we have to fight tooth and nail to get every single American covered and make sure nobody goes bankrupt ever again because of healthcare bills. And I mean, this is, of course, what the left is pushing for. Of course, this is what the left wants. But he's like, no, only talk about Trump, only make it about Trump, and then we'll get in power and do absolutely nothing, and that will lead to the rise of the next Trump. And by the way, he would never acknowledge that fact. Like, just so you know, Donald Trump won after 8 years of Obama and Biden. What does that tell you? It tells me the status quo was so terrible, was so bad, that people were willing to roll the dice on somebody as ridiculous as Trump. So now you think we just get rid of Trump, have the Democrats in power, and that's it. No, you're gonna seesaw right back to a more competent right-wing demagogue, authoritarian fake populist. President Tucker Carlson, President Josh Hawley, Mike Pence. But, you know, it's so short-sighted, and it's decidedly against policy outcomes. Because he's not in favor of any of the things that you and I are in favor of. He's literally just not for the things that we're in favor of. Because what I'm asking for, and what most of you guys are asking for, is so basic. Literally, all I want is to catch up to the rest of the developed world on a number of fronts. That's it. Give everybody health care, give everybody college, give everybody a decent amount of vacation time. Now with the pandemic, we need a UBI. Like, that's all we're asking for, but they act like, you know, sweet Jesus, we're Lenin or Marx or Stalin or Mao. That's how they treat us when we're just like, can we just have everybody have healthcare in the middle of a pandemic? Can we just copy every other developed world and do that? No. Instead, Rahm Emanuel will get offended at the notion that we can't just talk about Trump. We can't just make it about Trump. Of course, Trump bad. That's so obvious. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Rahm Emanuel's answer is piss off. I'm going to do nothing, but you're going to take it because at least I'm not that guy. He literally was offended at the notion we should maybe focus on policy and put that above just anti-Trump standard nonsense. He was offended at that. Guys, they're playing you for fools, man. They think you're a sucker. They really do. Rahm Emanuel thinks you're a sucker. He just wants the power. He just wants the position. He wants to do nothing with that power, with that position. And he couldn't make it any more clear.